Before Samsung became the global electronics empire we know today, it wasn't about smartphones, TVs, or chips. It began in a tiny trading store in 1938 in a South Korea that was hungry, chaotic, and occupied. Lee Byung-chul, a young entrepreneur, didn't dream of global dominance. He dreamed of survival, of opportunity. Samsung started selling noodles, dried fish, and locally produced goods, essentially what people needed to get through the day. Nothing glamorous, nothing futuristic, just commerce. But here's the strange origin. The name Samsung means 3 stars. Not marketing, not superstition. 3 stars symbolize something larger, greatness, eternity, and shining ambition. The irony? Lee Byung-chul was selling dried squid and sugar when he put that name on his company. Ambition wrapped in humble packaging. The company was tiny, yet the name projected a scale no one could yet imagine. Through the 1950s and 60s, Samsung expanded aggressively into textiles, insurance, and retail. Each move seemed random, but it wasn't. Lee Byung-chul had a vision that was chaotic to outsiders, obsessive to insiders: diversification. He believed that if a company could dominate multiple sectors, it could survive any crisis. And survive crises it did. Economic instability, political upheaval, and war threatened every business in Korea. Samsung endured, not because of luck, but because of relentless adaptation, discipline, and a taste for calculated risk that often bordered on obsession. By the 1970s, Samsung entered the electronics market. And here's where the story becomes strange. No one outside Korea imagined the company could compete globally. Japanese electronics dominated. American brands were trusted. But Lee had learned the lesson of 3 stars: persistence, precision, and presence. Samsung poured into R&D, sometimes imitating, sometimes innovating, but always learning faster than competitors could anticipate. Quality control became a mantra, perfection a demand. By the 1990s, Samsung wasn't just surviving, it was shaping global electronics. TVs, phones, chips. Everything carried the echo of that small noodle shop: adaptability, obsession, and ambition. And the strangest part? The company's power never shouted. Samsung became essential quietly, not through flamboyance, but through reliability and ubiquity. The world adopted Samsung before it noticed the empire had arrived. And as you see a Samsung phone, a chip powering your computer, or a TV dominating your living room, remember this: the company began with dried squid and sugar in a war-torn country, driven by a man who turned survival into empire. The strange origin of Samsung is not flashy. It's subtle, relentless, and quietly brilliant. After the small trading shop that sold noodles and dried fish, Samsung's story became a masterclass in adaptability. Lee Byung-chul didn't just want to survive. He wanted to dominate. And he knew that domination didn't come from a single product. It came from diversification, from learning everything, from trying everything. By the 1960s, Samsung had entered textiles, insurance, food processing, and retail. Some moves were successful. Others failed spectacularly. But each failure taught lessons no textbook could provide. The strange origin is evident here. Samsung thrived not because it avoided mistakes, but because it embraced them, quickly, ruthlessly, and strategically. A pattern emerged: identify a market, enter aggressively, learn faster than the competition, and exit if it didn't work. Few companies in history have used failure as a tool so consistently. And Lee Byung-chul applied this not only to business, but to corporate culture. Employees were expected to absorb mistakes as knowledge, to execute with obsession, to push innovation beyond comfort zones. Entering electronics in the late 1960s, Samsung faced a world dominated by Japanese and American brands. TVs, radios, and early semiconductors were crowded markets, and yet Samsung quietly invested in research. Small labs, large ambitions. Engineers were pushed to innovate. Products were copied initially, but refined aggressively. Quality control became a religion. By the 1970s and 1980s, Samsung TVs were no longer inferior, they were competitive. And in a subtle twist, Samsung didn't market like other companies. Its philosophy was, let the product speak for itself. Reliability became its invisible marketing tool, but the rise wasn't smooth. The 1980s brought crises. Asian financial markets fluctuated. Currency instability threatened exports. Internally, corporate culture was harsh, almost unforgiving. Lee Byung-chul demanded loyalty, discipline, and perfection. Rumors of authoritarian management styles circulated, yet these methods created speed, decisiveness, and unity. Samsung survived challenges that might have destroyed less obsessive companies. This is the essence of its strange origin: power not through charm or visibility, but through relentless internal rigor. By the 1990s, Samsung transformed again. Electronics dominated its strategy. Semiconductors, LCD panels, mobile phones, each became a platform for global influence. The world began to notice, slowly, and the narrative shifted. Samsung was no longer just a Korean conglomerate. It was a force quietly shaping the global market. And Lee Byung-chul's obsession with perfection and control became legendary. Product launches were planned meticulously, factory operations refined endlessly. And innovation was not occasional, it was constant. Samsung didn't rely on style alone. It relied on understanding the customer, studying competitors, and predicting future needs. The philosophy was subtle but ruthless: capture markets before others know they exist, and dominate them before they resist. From early flat screens to the rise of smartphones, Samsung's strategy often seemed reactionary, but it was anything but. Every move was part of a larger plan, a decades-long orchestration of influence and presence. And then came the smartphone revolution. The early 2000s saw Apple dominate imagination. Samsung appeared to be playing catch-up. But the strange origin whispered its lesson again. Obsession with detail, adaptation, and relentless iteration can turn reaction into leadership. Samsung studied failures, iterated designs, and pushed technology aggressively. Within a few years, Samsung phones became not only competitors, they became benchmarks. Features, build quality, cameras, and screens reflected decades of accumulated obsession. Samsung's rise was global, but also cultural. In every product, from semiconductors to appliances, it embedded itself into daily life. People didn't just buy Samsung, they relied on it. And that's the quiet genius. Unlike brands that seek attention, Samsung quietly ensured ubiquity. Homes, offices, streets, even satellites were powered by Samsung technology. Presence without overt spectacle, influence without theatrics. This is a rare form of power, almost invisible, almost unnoticeable, but undeniable. But obsession has its shadows. Samsung has faced controversies, labor conditions, intellectual property disputes, competitive allegations, and internal power struggles. Each challenge revealed the duality of the company's origin. Its relentless drive creates excellence, but also risk, conflict, and criticism. And yet, the company endured. Because its strange origin is rooted not in marketing, not in luck, but in a culture that prizes adaptation, persistence, and perfection above all. Now consider the personal side of this story. Samsung's rise mirrors human ambition itself. Every individual, every professional striving to leave a mark, confronts failures, rivals, and uncertainty. Samsung turned that struggle into a corporate philosophy. It transformed chaos into discipline, unpredictability into systems, and ambition into global scale. And in doing so, it reminds us that empires often begin in small, humble places: a shop selling noodles, a man staring at numbers and wondering what could be. By the 2010s, Samsung wasn't just a brand, it was a force shaping economies, culture, and even human expectation. People expect technology. They expect screens to be flawless, phones to be fast, products to just work. And Samsung helped condition that expectation. The company's strange origin lies in teaching the world to rely on it, subtly, persistently. without anyone noticing until it was already everywhere. And here's the final reflection. Samsung teaches a hidden truth about power, that endurance matters more than spectacle. Obsession matters more than charm. Adaptation matters more than genius. A company that began with dried fish and noodles became an indispensable force because it treated every detail, every second, every product as sacred. The strange origin of Samsung is not flashy. It's quiet, relentless, invisible. And maybe that is why it survives. Because the true lesson of any empire is not how loudly it announces itself, but how seamlessly it becomes part of life itself.